This podcast provides a platform for our guests to share their experiences and inspire our listeners to be brave and bold in pursuit of their dreams. As you listen, we invite you to explore how these concepts apply to your own story. You know what to do. Be great and be grateful. We're mic'd up with Mike DeChocho. Hey guys, bringing you a local Western New York favorite today, a phenomenal networker and connector, a serial entrepreneur building 2 six-figure businesses from the ground up by age 27. He's a keynote speaker teaching leadership to college students and businesses across the country. He's an author and 2 publishing franchise owner and the host of Western New York Entrepreneur Podcast. Welcome to the show, my friend, David Schaub.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike. It's an honor to be on here, and I'm honored to call you a friend.
We've been talking about this for a long time, and we've been planning on getting together, and then the quarantine hits, right? And it's just absolutely crazy what's going on right now. But I know previous to us recording this, we were already starting up a little bit of a conversation on handling it and business owners and entrepreneurs pivoting. So let's start right there. How are you doing? And I have a ton of questions to ask about things you're working on. So let's kind of save those for a minute. But how are you doing personally, just dealing with this, you and Amber at home? I know today's 50 degrees, guys. If you're listening to this, in Buffalo, it's like the first time we've hit 50 degrees since we've been trapped indoors. So I know you're planning on getting outside.
Yeah. So, I'll try to answer each question at a time here, but me and my wife are driving each other nuts, if we're being honest. So we're driving each other. So when people post like me, my wife, or me, my husband are doing amazing in this quarantine, I'm like, well, is there something I don't know? So, but that being said, I'm a very loud individual. So for those that know me, I'm very loud. And so I'm on the second floor recording this video. Mm-hmm. And she says, Dave, your voice pierces my soul from the basement. You know what I mean? From the first floor to the basement. So yeah. She can't escape me. And I'm on meetings all day. So poor Amber.
And this is also a Saturday, guys. I know you're listening to this for the first time on a Monday because we do mic'd up Mondays, but Saturday it's 50 degrees out, which is like summertime in Buffalo in the spring. Yeah. And Dave and I have agreed to do this thing. And I appreciate Amber. Let's give her a shout out for being cool to allow your voice to pierce through while she's trying to get some stuff done downstairs.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's great about 50 degrees is that it's not too warm where I'm like, I don't know if we can do this today. It's the first warm weather of 2020, but yeah. So we're gonna take a drive down to Erie, PA to go to Krispy Kreme because she hasn't had that in a month, and we're gonna go through the drive-through, do our social distancing thing. But so to answer your question about pivoting, for me. I own a franchise for a publishing company, as you alluded to, but we make 95% of our income off advertising. So as you know, advertising and publications probably isn't the greatest thing for business owners during this time, right? So, I mean, I can speak differently about that, but most people, so yeah, we're down 40%. In fact, I haven't done much with it the past month, and I've totally pivoted to things. I guess I'll just say it this way. New problems, which we have a new problem, COVID-19. It's a completely different problem we've never really heard of in our lifetime, Mike, Mike. And so when there's new problems, there's new solutions that are needed. And when there's new solutions needed, that means there's new opportunities. New opportunities that are not going to be there before and definitely not after. So we're at a crazy time for sure. But for me, I'm constantly asking myself the questions of, okay, like where are the new problems and how can my business or expertise or my services or anything that I can do good in a great way that can solve these problems? And how do you monetize that? How do you create more value? Or if you can't monetize it, no worries. How do you create more value? That way, when this is all said and done, people want to know who was there for them in the biggest time of need. So that's what's flowing through my brain every single day.
What I think is great too is new opportunity. I just wrote that down because when this thing hit, there was kind of, I don't want to say there's only 2 groups of people and put people in a box, but there definitely was 2 ways of looking at it. There was, woe is me, I can't believe this. What am I going to do? Oh my God. And there was, how am I going to create something? Which it was kind of neat to see our friends and many mutual connections create things like Grow Buffalo, which I'll have you talk about in a minute. How to do the first online entrepreneurial networking event. Let's figure that out and make it happen and get 100 people on and give money to City Mission. That's my next question. But my point is there's groups of people that kind of rolled down and kind of, got steamrolled by the quarantine because they weren't able to produce in some way. And there are people who created new solutions to problems that weren't existing 10 days ago and figuring it out. And that's the kind of people who you and I are hopping on Zoom calls with, collaborating with. You have like 4 new things you're doing that came out in the last 30 days because you're an opportunistic person, which was the number one reason I wanted you on this show. And that was even before those 4 things came out. So the first one I want to talk about is this really cool event that you held. You should be extremely proud of it. I know you beat yourself up like me and you want everything to be perfect the way it's created in our head, the time that we have the thought. We want to see it through, and you did a fantastic job. Unfortunately, I was not able to make it on that call. I know many people who were there. Tell us about it. The people tuning in, because this show is not only for Western New Yorkers, but many of them are. Yeah. If they weren't able to partake in this, I know there's opportunity for more in the future. What was the event? And tell us about how you connected it to a great cause.
Yeah, so my whole goal was originally where this originated was when I first started the podcast over a year ago. My end goal of it, like, what's your end goal of this podcast besides creating episodes? My end goal was to do a 150, 200 person in-person networking event where we have big speakers and, I was going to do like an open bar for an hour and free food but it'd be like $200 to go. So Buffalo never had anything like that. And I really wanted to create that. So really my goal of building all these networking relationships to do that. However, when, the whole pandemic hit, I'd maybe been on 2 Zoom calls my entire life before the pandemic hit. So I was not well versed in Zoom besides knowing how to click on a link. So that being said, a good friend of mine, Kanishka, he's like, I know how to do Zoom. He goes, and then a couple other people were just like, hey, actually it was Drew Cerza, the founder of Buffalo Chicken Wing Festival, where like 50,000 people come all over the country to go to it. He's like, Dave, why wait till the winter? Why don't you just do one now, a big event now? And I just sat there, I'm like, sure. So that's where it came out of. And thank God so basically I leverage what I feel like I'm good at, which is influencing, the gift of speaking, the gift of just building a vision around things, get people connected to it. And I delegated who was really good at Zoom, and they ran the Zoom call for me, which was Kanishka, a good friend of mine. Yeah. And so that's where that came out of. And then I was like, okay, well, I want to donate to something that's important, that's needed. So we teamed up with Buffalo City Mission. We donated about $1,000 to them. We donated every general mission ticket to them. Of course, we had some VIP packages and we had some business sponsors where I've just built relationships with them. And, we did a 100-person virtual networking event. So for those that are outside of Western New York, there's a huge opportunity that if you guys haven't done a 100, 200-person virtual networking event and you're in a big major, let's say a big city, a top 100 populated city, I would go for it. And because I'm guessing no one's doing too many of those.
And even if someone is, you can do just like when there was an in-person networking event, there could be 2 going on in the same city at the same time. There's different people, there's different ideas. Sometimes there's a theme behind it. Other times it's more general. I encourage anybody to use Zoom or whatever platform you want. There's other ones out there. I was using this since I started my company in November of 2017. I had a couple business partners in Rochester, so it's not that far of a drive, but it saves us an hour and a half, call it a 3-hour trip every day to hop on a call like this. I had people in New Jersey and New York City and stuff on my team. So we were able to operate remotely. It was cool. And now even within a smaller network, it could be someone down the street. People are realizing how important it is just to hop on a call like Zoom. What I want to do too, you mentioned, I talked about it in the beginning, Western New York Entrepreneur Podcast. You talked about starting that about a year ago with a goal of 150 to 200 people in a networking event. And you pulled it off, essentially, got in that 100 range in a whole different version of what you would have ever thought about, which is a cool story because that's what entrepreneurship is about. You don't just create this thing that's already in its final form when you're writing the idea, which is why I always encourage, and many of my guests have encouraged startup entrepreneurs to start, right? Because if you try to create whatever, maybe it's a star, and I've used this analogy, like in the beginning, it's going to be a square, and you might sell 3 of them. Then you reshape it to a triangle and you sell 12 of them, right? And then all of a sudden it's a circle and you knew that that's more of the product that people are looking for, and you sell 2,500 of them. And then you get to the star shape, and that's your moment of fame, right? You blow up and you sell this thing. You would have never got to the star if you didn't start the square. And your podcast is like you knew you wanted to get in front of people and network and use it as a leverage tool to meet more people. And you did, but you never knew you were going to get 100 people through Zoom, right? But if you didn't start your podcast a year ago, it would have most likely not happened, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to just commend you on is you were the first person in the Buffalo market, and maybe it's not true, but the first one I knew of that started a podcast here. And I came in shortly after you, and I'm sure there's many others. But I just wanted to commend you on that because it was something you and I were talking about, and I saw you do it. So you, again, just like I talked about, started it, and I had people pushing me to do mine, and eventually I'm like, I'm going for it. Our themes are a little bit different. Yours is Western New York focused, and mine is just a little bit more out to the world. But so talk a little bit more about what your vision is for like the next step for Western New York Entrepreneur.
Yeah, so I'll make a joke and I'll make fun of myself. I just make up stuff as I go. So for me, I have a big goal, that big networking event, and I knew there was something I needed to get there. But for me, it's just solving problems that I noticed that are arising. Yeah. So I noticed that the same 80%. I don't know about you, but when I do networking around Buffalo, and maybe if you're in a major city, you feel the same way. You feel like the same 70% of people are at the same network event all the time. I'm like, I feel like I'm meeting this. If there's 30 people there, I know the 20, and I saw them twice at another networking event, right? So I'm sitting here going, like, the same circle is basically there. Nothing wrong with that, but I want to meet more people. So I noticed something like that when I was doing more networks. I wanted to solve that problem. And what's really cool is when I do my networking events, I don't know half the people that are there, Mike. So I'm like, this is cool because if I don't know them, I'm guessing other people don't know them as well. Yeah. So it's been a really cool way to do that. So for me, it builds a personal brand around everything I do. So as it builds trust. It builds like, hey, I'm a real person. I'm not this guy in a cubicle in like Maine doing this.
Yeah.
So it just really does that. So for me, I'm just making these as we go. Like we just created hats for the podcast.
I love them. Yeah, those really, are sharp.
We can call this a movement. I call this a movement. I don't really call it a podcast anymore. It's the Western Entrepreneur Movement. We're just helping entrepreneurs and business owners locally in Western New York, whether it's Rochester, Buffalo, Syracuse, the southern tier as far as Jamestown, New York. We're just helping you take next steps. We're interviewing other thriving entrepreneurs to help you take next steps. And that's kind of our whole goal. And we're going to do that through an array of community events with businesses and entrepreneurs. And it's just all under that umbrella. And things change, things pivot. And so that's basically what I'm doing. And like I said, I'm just making this up as I go.
I love it, man. Well, you know what though? Again, you're doing it. You're absolutely active, and you're as I also mentioned in the beginning of the show, you're a networker, but also a connector of people. I've met people through you. At your last event that we were able to do in person, you talked about Kanishka. He helped you get that 100-person virtual networking event off the ground. He's also partnering with me on a project. I met him through you, but you didn't say, Mike, meet Kanishka. You just said, Mike, hang out with me. And there's people here that you could benefit from meeting. And now we're mutually benefiting, Kanishka and I, from hanging out together, now starting a new business venture together, which is super cool. And I know you have one with him as well. Why don't we go right into that? So the name of that, I'm flying down a few questions. You guys have the website. It's launched and it's active, right? Is it businessinquarantine.com? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I apologize. I interrupted you. It's businessinquarantine.com. And we just launched the beta website. So really, we're just in the collecting information form. So Business in Quarantine is just a movement of where we can learn from different businesses in specific categories all over the world and how they've pivoted and what has worked for them, what hasn't worked for them. So we want failures, we want successes, we want everywhere in between. You can post anonymously because you're like, well, I had a huge failure, but I don't want to be too public. You can totally post anonymously. But what's cool is that once we collect thousands and thousands of forms, we now, when you go to the website, once we launch the whole website, you can see what specific industries in your business, like, for example, whether it's maybe it's podcasting, maybe it's manufacturing, maybe it's doctors, maybe it's dentists, maybe it's chiropractors, maybe it's digital marketing. You can see what has worked for them and what hasn't worked for them during this time. Yeah. So it's like collaborating, but on your own time in a very less timely manner.
And it's candid, like you said. I actually looked at that beta site last night. There's questions on there to give you very specific things that you learn from already, that you're like, it's kind of like doing one-on-one Zooms with a lot of people, but it's putting it together in a catalog or a database. It's like a database of entrepreneurial problems, and you can go and view it and learn like what you can
Yeah,
take
it's
and
like
learn from it.
seriously collaborating without
Yeah.
all the hours of Zoom calls. It's
Yeah, it's
really
super cool.
so for me. I love learning from other people's mistakes. Not just I make a lot of them. Ask my wife, right? So, but that being said, I love learning from other people's mistakes. I like learning from other people's ideas and successes. We can make them our own. And you made a great point before this, Mike. Thomas Edison created the light bulb, but there's been 1,000 different improvements. So for us, this is the light bulb. Oh, this really worked. Let me improve on that. Let me put my own spin on. Let me make that idea my own and create it in my business in my specific industry or area. So for us, this saves so much time. It's like you can literally go to I have 100 other digital marketing people. If I'm a digital marketer, I can see what has worked for them, what hasn't worked for them. It's like that saved me so much time, and I can see what's working in different parts of the world. So I think it's almost like a research website in a way, but without doing the research, it's like already done for you.
Yeah, I was thinking about putting together a book that takes like things I learned from my guests of the show and kind of releasing it in a book, and maybe they could have like written responses to it, something like that. But I think the idea of it being digital is more accessible too, and it can update quicker. Like you can add people in at any time. When a book comes out, it's out. You can do a version 2. It's a lot of work. I really like the idea of a website because it's interactive.
We actually stole that idea from Humans in New York.
Oh, really?
So there's a website called Humans in New York. Where
I was hoping there was a website or something because I thought it was very odd for you. Instead of saying people in New York, humans.
Oh, is it people? I thought it was human.
No, I'm kidding. Like I learned something from this human in New York. It just the name of the company is Humans in New York.
So we honestly, like I said, like 90% of my ideas are not originally mine. Like maybe I had like 2% of the idea, but I needed someone to give me the idea. So for me, when people ask me, Dave, what has made you a very successful entrepreneur? Like it's implementation. It's not having the best idea, the most creative mind out there. Those are great, but you know what? I'm not a very creative person, Mike. I would never call myself a creative thinker. What I do though is when I'm very passionate about something, when I think that's an amazing idea, I act on it immediately. Like I will work 8 hours on it immedily and I implement it. So one of my favorite sayings is knowledge is not power. That's complete BS. It's use of knowledge is power. All the information's out there. It's just who's going to act on it, who's going to move on it quick, who's going to act on a good plan today versus a perfect plan tomorrow. So
yeah, it doesn't do it. That book doesn't do any good on the bookshelf. You have to read it and then do it in the book that you can learn and apply it to life, right? So here's what I want to do is there's some people that don't know some of your backstory, and you and I were able to when we met, you were very transparent, and I appreciate it, and opened up about your story. You told me about your journey in sales, how it led you to be an outside salesperson. Then you got into N2 publishing. You do public speaking at universities and things like that as a keynote. But I want to go back to one of the topics I talk about because I know many of our listeners, our audience is going through some adversity. It could be personal adversity. It could be business adversity. A lot of times there is no divider there. So I appreciate, if you can open up here. One of the things, it's like a prerequisite for entrepreneurs, almost inevitable, is that moment where they have to overcome some kind of adversity. You had some early on in life. So you grew up fatherless, right? Arrested 4 times. You worked a dead-end job for a long time, kicked out of college with a 0.86 GPA, all before your 20th birthday. So tell us, was there a moment or a spark, maybe a fire that was lit within you that allowed your personal growth for change? How did you turn those things into a positive change?
Yeah, a lot of times it comes down to a defining moment, right? And a lot of us don't make changes until, unfortunately, we hit rock bottom, right? Like, for those that catch it early, that's amazing. But I would say most people only do it when they absolutely have to. And so for me, my moment was when I was 20 years old. I was arrested. I actually beat up a kid at a house party, and his uncle was a Supreme Court judge for 44 years. So I hit the wrong kid. This is what my lawyer, dude, you hit the wrong kid, and I actually got a felony for it. I got a record for it because his uncle had a lot of leverage, and I was just a no-name kid that came from a single mom of, 5 kids. And, we didn't really have the best lawyer. We couldn't afford one. We were just, that being said, I did 6 months of weekends. So I literally drove myself to the holding center on Friday as a 20-year-old and then drove home on Sunday. I called them my weekend getaways. And So is a joke, right? And so I missed my birthday. And this is during the summer when everybody's having fun. It was really tough for me.
So you had to
And
go and do community service. Am I understanding it right?
so community service is completely different from that. So I had to do 100 hours of community service, but every weekend for 6 months, you literally drive yourself. You literally just go into the holding center and you literally are sitting in a jail cell for 72 hours.
But they only made you do it on the weekend.
Weekends. They call them weekends. So a lot of people that get DWIs have multiple DWIs, or they're not as harsh of a crime to do full straight time, or maybe it's their first time. So for me, that's what that was my
I never knew about that. Okay, wow.
Yeah. So all right. And so, anyways, I was about probably 3-4 months into doing my weekends, and at a 6-month sentence, about 3-4 months into it. And my sister at the time, she's 17 now. She's probably, I was thinking she was 5 or something at the time. I don't know. I was young. I'm 32. This is when I was like 20. So that being said, I came home and I said, when you are locked up in a cell for 72 hours, you miss everything. Your annoying little sisters, everyone. So I literally got home and I said, hey, Natalie. She came to the door. She goes, hey. And I'm like, hey, give me a hug. I miss you. And she goes, go back to jail. And she literally laughed like nothing happened, ran away in her little footy pajamas. And she has no idea the damage she just did to like my heart. But she's totally devastated me. Yeah. And I went down to my basement because I was one of 5 kids. I was the oldest of 5 kids. I went into my basement room because we had a ranch house. We weren't wealthy. And I just sat in my basement room and I cried. And I just sat there and said, man, if I die today, I'm a menace to society. I was kicked out of college. I'm basically a nobody. And it's time to make changes. So that's when that was the moment I decided. Wow. And then I did a sales job. I started a sales job not too shortly after because nobody else would hire me. And I
like 100% commission door-to-door deal, right?
Yeah, basically, it wasn't door-to-door, but basically was. And I turned out to be really good at it. And long story short, I was running an office for a marketing company a year and a half later, negotiating leases, hiring receptionists, hiring and training receptionists. Like, I didn't go to school for business. I completely, and God has been so good in that whole process. And then I just kind of went from there.
Right. So can you share a little bit about your journey where you started to build up your comfort in talking to people, being consultative, how you are now, and then walk us through how that shaped you into a franchise owner, which is a big moment, and into publishing, and also the community that you serve, which is in Clarence, New York. Is that accurate?
Yes, we do for 3. So again, I'm going to skip a lot of details because I want to make sure this podcast is exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was absolutely petrified of public speaking. If I spoke in front of 2-3 people, my legs would literally shake. When I mean they shake, I mean they're visibly shaking. And so I turned out to be really good at sales, and my manager at the time was like, hey, Dave, you want to give a talk in front of the people? There's only like 8 of us. We can kind of see tell us what's working for you. I'm like, oh my God. And I literally said, sorry, every 5. I'm holding the piece of paper. It's sweat is going into the paper. And I'm just sitting there shaking. It was like, you'd be like, what is going on with this kid? And so anyways, so that was my first speech, and I was horrible. And then I would shake seriously for the first couple 4, 5, 6, 7 times. We got a little more comfortable. Then eventually they hired me to be an assistant manager. Then I had to start running interviews, but I was shaking while running the interviews. But you just got a little better. Next thing you know, I'm doing it in front of 10 people, 20 people. Next thing you know, 6 months later, I'm running my own office. And now I'm meeting with 14 receptionists a week that I hired and doing W-2 forms with how to answer phones and how to do these. And now I have 80 sales reps working for me, and I have to motivate them on a daily basis. So you really the best way to get outside the comfort zone is just do it little by little by little by little.
Mm-hmm. You probably turned around and were like, wow, I got 80 people underneath me. But during the process, maybe you didn't even know the numbers were adding up, right? Because you were just so focused on
so focused. Like, to be honest with you, I was just sink or swim. And for me, I'm just like, so basically they gave me the keys to run an own office, but I had to find the keys. I had to negotiate the lease. They basically trained me how to run an office. Yeah. And basically they're like, if you fail, you're done. You're done. And if you don't,
you're young. Like, this was your first opportunity, right? Really?
I'm 22 years old at the time.
Yeah, so 20 years old, you're having the moment of realization that you got to do something differently. By 22, it kind of reminds me right now as we record this, it's draft weekend. We're on day 3 of the draft. We're recording this. There's a lot of kids that are 20 years old coming out of the draft, not even sophomores, juniors, seniors in college, that, are going from working at probably a whatever job, right? if they have one, to being highly, highly successful and being considered like a hero.
But you know
It's
what?
a crazy pivot. It's a crazy polarizing thing, right?
But and one thing I want to say is now they're handling like $4 million, right? So
Yeah.
one thing I want to say is that if the entrepreneurs that are listening, I want you to catch this real quick, is that if you're not where you want to be at, if maybe it's financially, maybe it's employee wise, maybe it's growth or scaling wise, maybe you not want to be, this is a perfect opportunity to really ground yourself in your foundation and what you truly are and what you want. Because I'm telling you, once you handed $4 million, if your foundation isn't there, we know what happens to those kids or adults that aren't ready for the foundation to grow. For me, I'm sitting here going, you know what? If I'm not, because we all know, like, if I'm not really good with money now, if I get $4 million or my business scales, it's not going to work out too well for me. If I don't have a good circle of friends around me right now, or business owners or thinkers, or a good group of people that nourish me, I'm eventually going to. So here's the thing I want to say. This is what I want to say.
Really a strong statement. That's huge.
It's huge. But here's what I want to say, though, is that money does not change us. It magnifies us.
Yes.
So if I magnify you, who would you be? Like, if you have a little bit of unintegrity, it's going to magnify that. If I'm not like, if I don't have the greatest foundation, it's going to magnify that. And when you build a bigger house on a crumbling foundation, it's eventually going to fall apart. So if you're not where you want to be, I know it sucks. I know you don't want to hear this, but I'm telling you, this is a perfect opportunity to build that foundation. Perfect opportunity.
Yeah, that is a highlight. I've been doing, this is like the 25th or 6th episode. That right there is one of the biggest highlights on my show so far, because it's so true. Like, everyone wants the big success to happen soon. And it's silly to not, I mean, you better be looking to go there. You have to think it first and then do the actions. But it's super important to realize, and I remind myself, and as you're saying that, I'm applying it to myself as I think about it, is sure, I know where I want to go and I know what I'm capable of doing. And I'm in the process right now of building my team to be able to do that. And I forget where I heard this recently, but it reminded me of it as well. A lot of people want to build this massive thing, this big ship, right? Well, if a ship starts to go down, right, you try to turn it, a pivot that we're in right now at the quarantine, bigger businesses are having a bigger problem with it, because turning a ship that's this massive thing takes 45 minutes to go 10 degrees. If you and I are in speedboats and we're making our couple $100,000 a year and we're super happy and building our families up around it, and we get something we need to pivot, you could do it in a speedboat, right? So as much as it's like, hey, I want this big $10+ million a year organization, those guys are having a hard time pivoting right now, where if you're making 100, you could maneuver a little bit easier.
Or
so that's like a second part,
right? Because you're not that committed yet. So if you hate what you're doing or you don't like who you are, and sometimes we're that in our point of life, we're like,
rebuild.
You can rebuild. You really can. But when you have 40 employees and you don't have time to master that anymore as much. So like you have to be. So for me, foundation is everything.
Foundation is everything. If you're not where you want to be right now, that's okay. Start building those foundational levels. Get the people around you. Think and read, spend more time learning, and then do the implementation. And then have some kind of checks and balances. That's the thing I always catch myself like, so I know if I'm even doing better than I was 2 months ago, right?
Yeah.
Did you have someone in your family? I know, unfortunately, you didn't really have a father figure growing up, right? Did you have either through your mother or someone that you looked up to, whether it could have been an athlete or just someone you recognized like an inspiration from?
Yeah, it's totally my mom growing up. My mom's a single mom of 5 kids, so really in a span of 4 years, I saw my mom. When I was a young adult, I was probably, I would say I was 14, at the time. In 4 years, I saw her basically go back to college while raising 5 kids. Well, she was actually pregnant when she was in college with her fifth kid. So, and she was basically, while pregnant, going back to school, finishing her bachelor's degree while working 3 jobs. And while actually, after she had her my sister, her daughter, she actually was fighting cancer, breast cancer. So this was all in a span of, I believe, 4 years. So seeing my mom work so hard to, there was, it's not easy. 5 kids under the age of 15, and when you're pregnant with one of them, right? And
it's not easy for anybody,
battling cancer, working 3 jobs. Like, I just sat there and went, well, hey, I don't want to do that in the future. But also in the same breath, I'm sitting there going, man, anybody can change their stars. Man, anyone, if they work hard enough and they have enough, I saw that. And my mom she has no clue, but she will sit there and say, well, I was just doing it because I wanted a better thing for my family. But that just really embodied in me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not a hard worker in school. I mean, I got like 75 averages. I wasn't motivated, but I realized that when I really loved something, I really put a lot of 100% into it. So anyways, I want to answer your question.
You learn that through the influence that she was living, right?
Someone's watching you. Here's the thing. If the world followed you around, not every day, because we're not that you're perfect and no one be perfect, they followed me either. But in general senses, if we followed you, will we be better or worse?
Right, exactly.
Will we be better or worse? And and I put in the date, and it was like I did some relationships things for college students. It's like is your partner making you better or worse? Or anyways, I'll just stop there because I'm not going to go into a different rant. But
no, I think that's great. It's a self-reflection moment for anybody listening to think. We all want the 15 minutes of fame, but if we had, let's say, we gave you 15 hours of fame, and we followed you for half of an entire day. Would people be inspired to do great things, or would they be, where would you be leading them? I think let's just leave it at that. I think that's great. You have 2 books out. One is called Never Complete, and the other is How to Feel Empowered When You Are Overwhelmed. That's a great relevant topic right now. So can you talk about what brought those 2 books about as an inspiration, and are they both available? I know you wrote them. They're not like fresh releases, so talk about them a little bit.
So my first book I wrote was called Never Complete. I originally wanted to call it A Work in Progress, but I noticed that 9 other books were called A Work in Progress. So I didn't want to be, fighting with those. So basically I called it Never Complete. And basically that book in a nutshell is how imperfect I am. It's 108 pages. I call it all killer, no filler, like a Sum 41 CD, right? And basically I just talk about how imperfect I am. I basically just share everything I've messed up. And it's like, there's things in that book prior that I never told anyone. And I just said, yeah, I messed up here. Man, as a leader, I've messed up here. And man, I've messed up here. So the point is that, and it kind of goes into the second book, How to Feel Empowered Overwhelmed. I'm sitting here going, if I can be such an imperfect person, I don't have to be perfect to be empowered, is what I'm trying to say. I don't have to have it all together to move forward. And I don't have to be mistake-free to be someone worth, following. And for me, for me in that book, in a general census, is that Jesus's grace really empowers everything I do. And for me, if my scoreboard in my life of how great I am is really indicated at how well I am and how great I am and how perfect I am and just how many good deeds I do, I would have just been screwed a long time ago is what I'm trying to say. So for me, his scoreboard resets me every day at 1,000 to 0. Every morning, man. And so for me, that empowers me. Like sometimes, we beat each ourselves up, especially as entrepreneurs, right, Mike? Like, man, I failed here, and man, I treated this person not so perfectly. And you know what? I wasn't at my best year. And man, the last 3 weeks, I just haven't been my best self. And you know what? It's just, he sits there and goes, I don't care. My victory is your victory. It doesn't matter what you say or everybody else says or social media says. I just care what I say about you. And you're a beloved son, and you have everything that I want you to be. So for me, that just empowers me. And that's kind of the basis of the book of, man, if God could work using me and I'm not the greatest person, man, look what he can do for you. And that's it. So basically.
That's awesome. I think too, you said the word a few times, the word perfect. And I think we all kind of have some level of chasing something we can define as perfect, or we see someone, we think they're perfect, and we're seeing only their social media version of themselves. And it's not even a true reflection on the human being that we're talking about, right? We change the word perfect with purpose. So you're thinking about serving with purpose and not just trying to solve to be perfect. I never thought of those 2 words as like replaceable, but every time I think of trying to be perfect at something, I'm going to change it to, in my head, to have purpose behind it. Why am I doing it? Why is it important? What can I give? What value can I add to this thing? It's not going to be perfect, and that's okay, right?
Yeah.
But if we give it the most purpose, that is, I think, the most important thing,
And I just want to add one thing, if you don't mind, is that, like, for me, when I'm doing something, it's who I'm becoming that is more important than what I'm doing. So when I know who I am, who I'm created to be, what my passions, my gifts, like what I feel like I was created to do, like not having the whole picture figured out, because sometimes we just get a little piece of the puzzle and we don't see the rest of the picture. But it's like, I feel like this is my gift. I feel like God put me on earth to do this in this moment. And I feel like when I know who I am and what I'm created to do, the doing just naturally happens. So for me, we don't have to have the whole picture. Just like, I feel like this is my little next step right here. Maybe the next step is, maybe it's like, well, I want to run a marathon. Okay, maybe my next step is just to buy some running shoes.
Yeah.
Maybe the next step is just get an accountability partner. Maybe
Yeah.
it's like, I want to have some better friends. Okay, maybe my next step is just to remove an apathetic friend out of my relationship. Maybe it's to get rid of something. Often our next step is never to do something, but it's to get rid of something to create room for something better for us. So for me, it's like, it's not what I'm doing, because at the end of my life, nobody gives a freaking rip what car I own, what house I do, how much money I have, all these businesses I own. Nobody gives a freaking rip, in my opinion. But they remember who you were. And again, when I know who I am, and who I'm doing is what I'm doing, or who I am is more important than what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And really get that. It's just like the doing just happens. It really does. It just
Brother, so well said. And what's funny is I actually have that as one of my questions. So my question to you, to follow that up, it's a two-part question. Why do you do what you do? Number one. And if you can be known for one thing, call it at the end of the life, as it's being evaluated, David Schaub did this, what would it be?
Yeah. So say the first question one more time. I'll answer.
So
that.
why do you do what you do at the end of the day? Yeah. What?
There's a lot of generic answers for my family, because for me, one thing that, if I'm just being real, just real transparent and vulnerable for a moment, for me, I really want to break family chains. So for me, things that I just wish that things were different in my life, or things I wish that, I just want to be the one that does that versus complain it wasn't there. I want to learn from it. But I also want to break chains. And for me, I feel like that's one of my purposes in life to do so. And sometimes monetary wise really does help that. But sure. I want to help other people do that. So honestly, I'm just taking a next step like everybody else. I guess I have a 5-year, 10-year plan, a vision of where I want to be and what I want to do. But for me, if I feel like God's calling me to start an orphanage in Africa, I'm just going to go do that. I'm just, let me go do that. I'm not saying that's what he has me to do, but I'm just using a really radical example.
No, and I that's one of the biggest things I love about you is that you get it done. Like, you start to solve for, hey, we want to do this virtual network thing. It's not an idea for next year. It's happening this week. David puts it out. It's happened by Friday. And you find the people, because again, it's not about you driving the bus and you changing the tires and you fueling the thing. It's like bringing the right people together. But to answer the second part, if you can be known for one thing, what would it be? Someone just said, man, David Schaub. I know it's a tough question, but
no, really, seriously, if you was at my funeral, hopefully long time away, but if that's the case, like, he just followed God with all of his heart. And that's really one thing that I just, if I'm just being real, I know it's not politically correct. I know it might offend some people, and, sorry, but not sorry, but that's honest.
This show's all about being real. So you can say that's what's
not politically correct these days. But for me, it's just, if I'm at my best, I'm telling you, like, he just gave me a passion for life that no business, no relationship, no goal or title could ever give me. And I'm telling you, like, I was 24 years old. I was making 6 figures. I was going on a new date every week. I had 2 cars, winter car, summer car. I bought a house, and, I went on 6-7 vacations a year, and I just sat there and I said, so I just do this for 50 years. Is this what I do? Like, that's life. Like, there's got to be more for this. And I wasn't depressed. I just wanted more. And as human beings, we want the 100%, not the 98%. I just wanted that 2%. And I just realized I wasn't going to get it out of what America or the American dream tells us we should get. And I'm telling you, like, I'd rather have very little in my relationship with Christ than a whole lot and not. And that's really what.
Wow.
Sorry if that was too much.
That is not too much. That was amazing. Thank you for being real. Again, I said it. This show is about that. This is not about political correctness. I'm not obviously trying to offend people, go out of my way to do that. I know there's some shows where it's like they want the soundbite. I'm not that. Yeah. I am about being real. If you believe in God as I do, I want you to be able to talk about that. If you don't, I'm willing to have somebody who come on here, maybe tell me their opinions, why not? But whatever. I'm real. I'm transparent as you are. And that answer right there, I think, is so important for us to realize. I don't have the summer car, winter car thing yet, but I'm planning on having a nice financial freedom lifestyle, right? But I do know, and I'm super mindful of the 2% where that you're talking about, the fulfillment factor. That actually, and this episode is not about me, but I just want to share the reason I started as an entrepreneur was I wasn't fulfilled in a successful role I was in prior, working in corporate America as a retail sales manager. Mm-hmm. a store manager. I did love the company and the products and the services and the people I was with, but the 30-year vision didn't feel right for me from a fulfillment standpoint. And I did reflect, like, if God put me on this planet, is he put me in the best position? Am I doing what he would really want me to be doing and what's best for my family? And the answer wasn't yes. So I figured out what that was supposed to be. And I'm still figuring it out every day. Why? Because we're not perfect. We're on purpose. That was awesome, man. Those are two highlights.
You just say that right now. I don't have it figured out. I'll never have it all figured out. But we don't have to have it figured out to move forward. We just don't.
Who's someone that you find inspiration from, like a podcast you listened to, a book you read that you just said, man, I got to get this in front of more people?
If I could buy everyone one copy of a book in the world, it would be called, it's a weird title, but it's an amazing book. It's called Follow the Cloud by John Stickle. And I'll tell you, if I could, if I had $1 trillion and you say, Dave, you got to buy one book for everyone, it's called Follow the Cloud. It is a game changer. And it's just obviously.
Who's the author?
It's called the author's name is John Stickle, JOHN STICKL. It's called Follow the Cloud. It was a #1 best-selling last year or 2 years ago. One of the two.
I'm going to grab that because I like learning new things and people that are influential and that I can learn from. Grow your think, right? What's one new skill you learned during the quarantine?
Zoom calls. So Zoom calls is one thing I think, and I also realized leveraging, relationships. So for me, we've really tripled our podcast following really in a month and a half. And well, how did you do that? It's really because I did so many one-on-ones. Like, you can ask my wife. I'm literally in my office at 8 a.m. and I don't leave till like sometimes 5 or 6 p.m. And I'm just like, so what do you do all day? You're not doing like your publishing business, being with business owners. I'm like, yeah, but I'm meeting like one-on-one with businesses. And I'm not talking like really amazingly. Yeah, there's some really big business. And then there's some that just started their business 20 minutes ago. And it's everywhere in between. And for me, it's like, once this pandemic is over and they open up everything, I'm not going to have enough time to build these relationships with people. Everyone's going to be crazy. So for me, people are more available than they're ever going to be. If you can't, no offense, if that guy or girl or that guy or lady that you're trying to get a hold of for a Zoom call one-on-one, if they don't give it to you now, they're not going to give it to you ever. I'm telling you that right now. So people, I'm not saying people are sitting on the couches all day, because I'm not. Yeah. But the point is that people are more available than ever. So that's one thing I've realized is leveraging relationships, giving people, give first. Kind of like we both love Gary Vee, right? So basically, I love that jab, right hook. You just want to give, and then ask. Give, then ask. So for me, I want to give. And I think when you do that genuinely for a month and a half with 20 different people a week, they just go to bat and go to war for you, man. They really do.
I think that's awesome. You talked about being one of 5 children, and you're also one of 2 twins.
Yeah, and my twin brother has twin girls. So
no kidding. Wow.
Yeah. So if you see me running around with 4 kids in East Aurora, New York, it's not me.
Yeah, it's not you. All right. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that. The question I have here is, your twin brother Dan, right? If you're here and being truthful, what's one thing that you admire about your brother and one thing that always drove you crazy? And then the second part is, if he was to answer that about you, what do you think he would say?
So one thing I love about my brother, one thing that drives me crazy. Okay. Oh my God. What do I love about my brother? What I really love about him, he's really my built-in best friend. He really is. Like, he's the only person that I've seen physically besides my wife, but really during this quarantine. And, he has a really nice home gym at his house. So we've been working out like crazy.
That's awesome.
And so honestly, I just know he's someone that what's really cool is that like sometimes we know how we think. We basically have the same DNA. So a lot of times he'll like, Dave, you're being an idiot. Dave, that doesn't sound right. And that's one thing I love about. One thing that drives me crazy, I don't know. Like growing up, we drove each other nuts. We probably went through like 7 drywalls, a china cabinet. Like we were just 2 6'7", basically gorillas going at it. And your mom's trying to chase you with a frying pan, trying to get you guys to stop fighting. So
Mom probably won a lot of the battles, I'm guessing, right? She cleaned
house.
It
really wasn't until he left for the Navy when he was 22, and I started my business in Jamestown, New York, where I'm from. I'm Buffalo now, but I started my original in Jamestown, New York. And we both realized that all these years of fighting and trying to be individuals, because everybody's teamed us up together as twins, we realized that we were really just best friends in the whole process. So really, when he left the Navy for 4 years, and obviously I wasn't with him, when he came back from doing his service, that's when we were like, yeah, we never fought really anymore. Like,
you appreciate things that I think that's another really strong lesson is why if you give a kid just everything, they're never going to have a full appreciation for it. And if you hold things back when they do get it, they're going to want to go crazy with it, which is kind of a scary thing. If you tell your kid, you can't watch TV ever, like the second the parents are out of the room, the kid's watching TV. So you got to like teach them how to learn balance and how to appreciate. But you appreciated your brother after 4 years of him being gone. So then you guys came back and became bros and super strong. If he was to answer the question of tell me one thing that, that you're proud of with your brother, David, and maybe one thing that you did to drive him crazy.
What did I do? I wish he was here, man, because I want an honest answer. I really do. I don't want to go, I never bothered him. I'm sure I drive him nuts. So one thing I'm sure he probably appreciates about me, to go with that one first, is that, basically my brother is now a home inspector. He was an electrician.
Lieutenant Dan, right? Is that the playoff of Forrest Gump?
Yeah, Lieutenant Dan. Yeah, we love Forrest Gump. We love it, man. And so he does Lieutenant Dan home inspections. And so really just, hey, Dan, like, if you really want to do well for this, like, maybe you should go into business for yourself. So really, he's really taking off there. So he does home inspections and he does electrical work, because you learn, he was the New York State electrician for the Highway Authority, New York State Highway Authority. So it's all under Lieutenant Dan home inspections umbrellas, but he does home inspections and electrical work. But I just really push him to, hey, Dan, let's do this. Let's do that. Let's connect you with these people. Let's move here. And so he probably really appreciates that about me. I'm guessing. So anyways, and what drives him nuts is probably, so for me, I'm really type A, and I'm like, okay, if I create this 4-page business plan for you, I want you to do it now. Like, I wanted you to do it yesterday. Even though I gave it to you now, I wanted it done yesterday, which isn't fair, right? So whenever I work with somebody on a business that I'm really close with, I'm like over dominating. I'm like, did you do step A yet? Like, what? You're on step D? Do step A first. And so I'm sure I drive him nuts there.
Yeah. It's interesting when you see twins. Obviously, you're physically close together. You look alike, but personalities can be so different as well.
We're very different.
Yeah. One message to leave our audience inspired to be brave and bold in pursuit of their dreams, which is my show mission. What would it be if you can just look in the camera right now and just be like, guys, and deliver a message that inspire them to be brave and bold in pursuit of their dreams?
Man, right on the spot. Geez. Okay. So one thing here is that one thing I want you to know is that you don't have to be perfect to have, you don't have to have perfect or have it all together to move forward in whatever you're doing right now. And anything that hasn't worked out for you or hasn't worked out for you, or has worked for you, hasn't worked for you, it doesn't matter. So I want to leave you with this. This is not as good as it gets. You might sit there and go, Dave, oh my God, like, things are going horrible right now. Nothing's going great. Everything that could have went wrong. Well, I have good news for you. This isn't as good as it gets. Hope is here because Jesus is here. But not only that, but you have a next step to take, that he just wants you to take away things that just don't belong in your life, or maybe a next step that do belong in your life. This isn't as good as it gets. Or you might sit there and go, Dave, I don't know what you're talking about. Things are so great right now. I could imagine things being better. And I'm telling you right now, even when those moments when I'm like, man, life is so good right now, I just hear that gentle whisper say, man, this isn't as good as it gets. Sure. So I'm telling you right now, I say the best for last for you. This is not as good as it gets. Take your next step today.
Yeah, and that could be applied to anyone, whether you're not where you want to be, you're doing the things you want to be doing, or you're highly successful. We talked, I think it was off camera, about Michael Jordan, because that show's relevant right now, but he was one of my influences as a kid, just that greatness factor. And even when he's winning championships, he still wanted more, right? The next level of his ability. And so I think that speaks to what you just said there as well, is there's always that little bit more. You know?
And like, what's cool is that we don't do more because we're not necessarily like, I'm trying to think how I want to say. There's a lot I want to say.
Show off kind of a thing. To
me, it's like, you know what? You're working from victory. So anything you do is like a bonus. And I mean that in a positive way. It's like, you're just becoming who you were meant to be the whole process along. So you don't have to do it to prove anyone wrong, to prove that you're not a failure, to prove all these, that I swear I'm as good as I say. None of that. You are great where you are. But when you take a next step, it's just helping you and people around you take the next step around them. Like, I have a shirt that says, next step leaders. We take our next step so others can take theirs. That's all you're doing. You're great where you are, but you know what? You're not done where you are, and like, there's just so much more for you, but in a positive way, not because you have to prove anyone anything. So
yeah, I think it's awesome, man. I also added this recently to the show because my tag on all my emails and a lot of my posts is be great and be grateful. Yeah. What I mean by that is is, again, the be great part is give everything you got. Like if you have all the tools and you got the ability to think a certain way and go and take actions, like that's what the world needs. Go do what serve your world around you. That's the be great. And then grateful is reflect on that. Like thank God for the great things you do have. And, the things that aren't happening, thank you for those too, because I must be needing to learn something. So that's the be great, be grateful. What are 3 things you're grateful for?
Oh, I'm grateful that my wife is super patient. I'm super grateful for just the gift of entrepreneurship. It really is. Like I could sit there and say, well, I'm so talented. Who gave me the talent? I could sit there and say, well, I take advantage of the opportunities, but who gave me the opportunities, right? Who gave me life today? So I'm just grateful for entrepreneurship. And I'm I guess going to number 3, I'm just grateful for life. I'm grateful to live in not just a country that's free, but how many of us actually feel free? Like there's a big difference between being set free and actually living free. So I'm thankful that I'm able to just live a life of freedom and have a patient wife and entrepreneurship. Like this is like, it's a miracle. It really is. So
well said. Yeah. Those are 3, especially putting your wife first. That was a smart one.
Yeah. And people, I think I was asking a different podcast, like, hey, what was like your number one accomplished that you're proud of? I'm like, getting married to Amber.
Yeah.
So, so how I pulled it off is beyond me.
Well, you're a good closer. I know that. We all know that.
Oh, sure.
She said I do. So there you go. That was your biggest sale yet of your life, right?
Absolutely, man.
Hey, we got a couple minutes here. If you want to add anything, please do. I'm going to give you a virtual fist bump. Bada bing. Dude, this is awesome. I love the Bills shirt, the hat. It's an exciting draft weekend. I like the first 2 picks. You want to talk Bills for like a minute?
Yeah, I like the picks, man. I like the defensive end that was projected to go in the top 20, go in the 20th range. We got him a whole round later. And honestly, I have Singletary in my dynasty draft, so I'm not happy we grabbed another back in the 3rd round, but I know it's good for our team, so I can't expect them to go around my dynasty draft. What about you?
I like at first I wasn't super crazy about the defensive end. I didn't do a ton of research going into this. I'm going to do a shameless plug. I'm doing a fundraiser for Leukemia Lymphoma Society, and I'm raising money up to 10 weeks here into June. And so I did a draft contest and challenge. I was focused on making sure that was running properly. I didn't do a ton of research on the picks. But when I noticed that he was actually someone that a lot of draft people who get paid to follow the draft and actually talk about it, they had Buffalo taking our defensive end in the 22nd pick, where we would have picked if we didn't pick up Stephon Diggs from the Vikings. So I'm like, wow, like we actually got Stephon Diggs, we got the D end we wanted, and we were able to take a running back that was also kind of a first or second round type projected running back. We got him in the 3rd round. That's like 2 A+ draft picks right there. On paper. All we can talk about is on paper. I'll tell you what, though, Moss looks really, really good. And I know that's not good for your Singletary dynasty. Yeah. But here's a scoop. Like, Singletary's a stud. I didn't see that. And I've been right on a lot of picks with the Bills, but I didn't actually like the Singletary pick at first because I thought we had other needs. I wanted a tight end right there. Or actually, I wanted us to take DK Metcalf. Yeah. I think he came off the board at that point last year, but I wanted us to do something to move up, maybe give up that pick to move up and get DK Metcalf because we didn't have Stephon Diggs last year and we needed a playmaker. Yeah. But Singletary proved me wrong. Dude could play. He's a stud. And I think Moss is simply that he's almost like a Mark Ingram. Yeah. So it's almost, and I'm not saying that Singletary is like Kamara, but I feel you got those 2 guys now. Plus Allen's developing. He has 3 solid receivers.
You got more excuse. Not that he makes excuses, but 0 excuses this year. So I bought my Bills season tickets.
He's close to having 0 excuses. I still think he needs like a super strong tight end target.
Dawson Knox.
I'd be that guy. Hey, Dawson.
I just want you to know.
You're wrong, brother. I like you. You got the look.
Dawson Knox was number 3 in the NFL for yards after catch for tight ends.
What
an average of yards after catch?
He didn't catch a touchdown in college. How did that happen? Was it just like?
Well, if you want to get technical here, they had DK Metcalf, they had AJ Brown, and they had another receiver who wasn't drafted that year.
On that team, yeah.
He was like 5th on the totem pole. And but anyways, I'm really excited about Dawson Knox. I really feel like in 2-3 years, because Travis Kelce wasn't used for much his first 2 years, and then now he really blew up. So that being said, I feel like he's going to go that route. Where this year,
I love Rambo. He's got the look. He's got the size. He had some dropsy problems going on. If he can get the dropsies figured out, he is the guy. Let's be real. I would still like us today. I say us. If Brandon Bean wants to call me, my phone's on. But I would like to see the Bills take another tight end. So then we have like Knox could be the one, and then even Croft came in when healthy. He's above serviceable at that position. Yeah. I wanted to see another guy in there where we can put 2 tight ends on the field and just take care of it, man.
Maybe we'll grab.
I want to see more than 17 points a game where our defense is sweating it out. I want to see 27 to 30 points.
I'll tell you right now, if I saw Moss in the backyard and Singletary in the backyard, and I have like Cole Beasley, John Brown, and Diggs, I'm sitting here going, and then Knox, who's, you got to be aware of him. He's not like the worst man in the NFL.
For sure.
I'm just sitting here going, yeah, what do you do? You know what I mean? Like,
and how about this? Your quarterback drops back, all those guys move out, and Josh Allen can slide for 12 yards and get a first down. And that's where I want him to dominate. I don't want to see the design runs where he's running into a linebacker after 3 feet. I want to see spread those guys out, and he can just keep getting 12 yards every time, and you can't even touch him because he's going to run and slide. That's when I think our offense is going to open up.
We'll get Dable on a phone call here, a press conference here.
I think we need to. I didn't like seeing us run DeMarco out as our number 1 wide receiver option
and throwing a double coverage.
Throwing a double coverage to a 5'11" fullback.
Yeah.
That being said, love what the Bills are doing. Bean and McDermott are the two of my favorite front office members that we've had. The combo is super strong.
Yeah, I actually bought my season tickets during the pandemic.
Okay.
So I got my season tickets ready to go. So as long as there's a season, I'm going to be there, man.
Well, now that you bought them, they're going to do it no matter what. They're like, dude, Schaub bought tickets. We got to do the season now. That's awesome.
Maybe we'll go to a game together, because I doubt my wife wants to go to 12. So
yeah, if you got room in your box, I'll be happy to come up and hang with you.
Sounds good, my friend.
All right. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate what you're doing in Western New York. Seriously, what you're doing is special, and keep being you, brother.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, super excited to announce that Mike's Warriors LLS fundraiser is now live. The button is active on Facebook. You'll see that when I'm posting, that you'll be able to click on the Donate Now button. It's also active on my website as well. So if you guys are able to do that, I want to thank you ahead of time for participating and helping out a greater cause. I do want to be mindful, obviously, through coronavirus. Some of us have been compromised in our health. We have a family member or friend that we know that's battling through that right now. Some of us have either lost our jobs or have been working in conditions that we're not used to. So maybe we lost clients due to this because they had to close their doors. Whatever it might be, I just want you to know that I am mindful of the current situation going on. And I completely respect if you're unable to donate at this time, or maybe you're hesitant to do that. All I ask in that situation, if you're not able to personally give, is if you can share this with your friends and family. Literally share it through social media, or just at the dinner table talk about it. Hey, Mike's doing something for Leukemia Lymphoma Society, and you can get that information in front of more people. That right there is a tremendous help, and I'm grateful for you doing that. If you're able to give a little bit, maybe half of what you were able to do before, whatever it is, we're grateful for it. We can do this $1 at a time. We're going 10 weeks here. The kickoff call last night, there was just so much energy on it that people are overcoming some of the adversity that we're dealing with, and we're helping each other out. And I just see the energy that people have behind Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and also myeloma as well. Did you guys know that 40% of kids that are battling cancer, it's a blood-related cancer? And of those children, right now, if they're in a hospital, they're having limitations, and some not even able to see their parents. I can't even imagine being in that situation. My heart goes out to all the families that are impacted by any cancer, especially blood-related cancers right now, as this campaign is live. So I'm thanking you ahead of time for donating. Anything you can do, $25, $50, $100. If it's more than that, seriously, appreciate everything that you guys are doing to help me. Again, if you donate, also share. If you're unable to donate, please share this. Extremely thankful for you listening right now, giving me your attention for a couple minutes here. You guys can check out more show notes and information on each episode at mikeduppodcast.com, MIKED uppodcast.com. We're powered by Social Chameleon. You guys know what to do. Be great and be grateful.